Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, he is presently in his late 50s, and is going to share his story about a few years ago when he finalized a divorce with his now ex-wife. And you're going to see in this story, guys, that like so many guys before him, and sadly many guys after him, when he was younger, he was clueless, and as he says himself, very blue-pilled. And you're going to see that he, for reasons that are all too typical, he ended up marrying this woman way too soon, but she was a lot younger than him, very beautiful, so naturally he was hypnotized by her body, and it didn't take long before the true colors truly came out. Big surprise there. And he was essentially trapped in a very unhappy marriage. Also, he discovered very quickly, she definitely was not someone you couldn't trust, a monkey brancher, if you will, and even though he made damn good money, still wasn't good enough for her. But ultimately, you're going to see how this guy, unfortunately, he realized that if he divorced her, he would get hammered, just absolutely crushed. So he bided his time. He bided his time and formed a plan. This guy had the patience of Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars to formulate his plan to have it where he, upon the divorce, was able to make it that he walked away with a ton of money and she walked away with nothing. In fact, debt. How did this amazing, unimaginable thing happen? He used her greed against her. As Master Qui-Gon said, greed can be a powerful ally. And you're going to see this. But a lot of lessons here, guys, about how the monkey branching, very real thing. How what happens when you get married too early, don't really get to know her. Doing it, having the blue pill mindset, but also how you're screwed, but using their weaknesses. And this can be applied to anything in life when you have an enemy, using things like their greed against them, things like that. So it's a good story. For you guys that have been divorced and got raked over the coals, you'll appreciate this one. And by the way, at the end, he definitely made a point. He sent me some attachments where, because this sounds like an unbelievable story, as you're going to see, legal documents. He showed me with stamps and all that type of stuff, confidential stuff, which I'm not going to share because obviously I can't, proving that his story is true. So he starts off, he says, hi there. I enjoy watching your channel and listening to all the crazy stories. I'm in my late 50s, and the advice I'd give to young men today is, number 1, never fully trust any gal. Number 2, keep your guard up at all times. And number 3, the gals are pack animals who, as a pack, have declared war on all men. I do agree with a lot of that. I wouldn't say every single one, but I'd say a vast majority. He says, my war story. In my early 30s, then being a total, and he writes this in giant capital letters, blue pill, I married a 23-year-old blonde bombshell after knocking her up. Smack. Married her that quickly? I'm guessing what I'm putting together is you didn't truly know her too well. Do you know that child is yours? No offense, but I have to ask. That's no reason. That's old school, our grandparents' mentality. I'm sure you thought you were doing the honorable thing, but you could have taken care of the child without having to marry her. That old school mentality got people a lot of miserable marriages to people they didn't even barely know because they had a roll in the hay and the condom broke, or she did it on purpose. But remember, she was 23, this guy was making money, so maybe it was on purpose to get herself a good meal ticket. Who knows? Says here, and I was looking forward to starting a family. I own my own mobile services business, which was lucrative and growing, so life was good for a few years. My marriage hit the rocks when my wife's female hypergamy kicked in. It was 6 years into the marriage when I paid a little over $8,000 to take her on a 7-night Caribbean cruise. Once we put to sea, she wanted nothing to do with me, and she began scooping out all the other men on the ship. This is obviously a while ago. $8,000 for a 7-night cruise. I mean, I know they're not cheap because I've been on cruises, but I'm guessing, given your description of her, you guys are probably in a luxury suite and all that. Apparently, she was trying and hoping to monkey branch far above me. Holy effing shit. I thought as I was making over $150,000 a year at that point in my life, he says, God, I was so pissed off. This BIT filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy just months before I married her. She was nothing but a young pretty face, and everything that I did for her and the child we had together meant nothing to her. Absolutely nothing. Hang on. You married her knowing that before you all met and you started dating and rolled in the hay and she got pregnant, did you know that she obviously was that bad with money that she had to file bankruptcy? Is that what you're telling me? Because if you are aware of this and still married her, let alone dated her, smack. I tell you guys all the time, one of the reasons you date a gal a long time, one of the big ones is to find out how she is with money. Because if she's terrible with money, if she spends, and you like to save and build wealth through your investments, newsflash, you marry her. Goodbye to that future. Goodbye to those dreams, because she's not going to change. So if you knew this going into this, I know you said you were blue pilled back then, can't entirely feel bad for you, brother. So guys, there's another lesson there. Money. How is she with money? She was nothing but a young pretty face, blah, blah, blah. That's when the RP hit me like a ton of bricks, and I instantly morphed into MG Tao. During the remaining days on that long and emotionally painful cruise, I began plotting, like strategizing in a game of chess, how to exit my toxic marriage without getting divorce graped in the process. Well, good luck, because guys are going to get graped. He says, I put up with her BS for years after that cruise because it was cheaper to keep her versus getting taken to the cleaners in family law court. During this time, she won nearly all the verbal fights and battles because she, backed up by her genocentric family law court, had me over a barrel. Therefore, it was only after our child graduated high school that I was finally able to exit my toxic marriage and put a reverse divorce grape on her. And oh yes, he does. The climactic marriage contract termination battle was years in the planning, and the long war between us came to a spectacular end when I exacted my final revenge and got even for all her decades of verbal and psychological abuse. Well, I gotta ask, bro, if it was that bad... Now, while this story is entertaining, and I know how this ends, and you make out quite well, was it worth it? All those years being with her? Because, to be honest with you, even if you got completely raked over the coals, at least you'd be with her, rid of her, right? You'd take a hit. Obviously, she'd get the house, probably, most of the custody of the child, the assets. But as a young, enterprising man, you had your own business at the time. You obviously are smart enough to start over, even if you had to live in a studio apartment for a couple of years, rebuilding, and you would have been all right, as opposed to with that misery. I know we can't change the past here, but guys, I know, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, because I'm not one, but also, you want your kid being raised in a household like that, because I don't want your daughter to end up in a marriage just like that, or end up acting like her. I'm going to guess she doesn't. But life is short, guys. You could have dropped dead before you divorced her and died being married to that miserable witch, right? So there's always options. But, okay, he waited long enough and justice will be served. But I had to mention that. He says, revenge is a dish best served cold. So how cold did she get it? Well, I'm excited. I exited my toxic marriage with over $480,000 in assets, zero debt, while she exited with $10,000 in assets and $60,000 high interest rate credit card debt. So yeah, I'd call my post-divorce $480,000 net worth versus her post-divorce $50,000 negative net worth, a difference of $530K, one damn cold dish indeed. How was the cold-ass revenge even possible? Well, I did it with my own legal research. I filed all the papers with the court. We both went before the judge, pro se, no lawyers, and she agreed to everything I wrote in the separation agreement, including a golden waiver clause that prevented the judge from having any decision-making power regarding the separation of assets and liabilities. Now we're all thinking, how in God's green earth did she go along with this without an attorney? And why did she go along with everything this guy said? Well, you'll see. He's going to use her greed against her. In law, fair and equitable does not necessarily mean 50-50. And in some cases, when both parties agree, lopsided asset/liability splits like this can be considered fair and equitable under the eyes of the law. He says, how was I able to convince her to get divorced without a lawyer? We're all wondering this, and I'm sure the lawyers watching this video are really wondering this. He says, this was war, a financial war. That is, after all, what a childless divorce is really about. All is fair, love and war, and many folks may feel that I'm an a-hole for my battle tactics. Not on this channel, brother. But in the end, you can't argue with success. In a nutshell, I gave her a financial interest in a fledgling, zero-employee startup tech company and told her that this company would absolutely fail if she wasted all my resources on divorce attorneys. She stood to gain potentially millions of dollars in the event that my business partner and I could actually get this company off the ground. However, what she failed to understand was that she had a better chance of winning the state lottery than earning one dime from this startup company. Hence, my battle tactic of pushing her greed button worked to keep the blood-sucking attorneys out of it and allow my court filings to stand unchallenged. In other words, okay, I'm doing this startup. You're going to have a stake in this company, and if it takes off, you're going to make millions of dollars if we obviously do that well, or maybe somebody buys us out. But I need all the money I have. We can't waste it away on attorneys. So we go through this route, no attorneys, you agree to all this, you're still going to have a financial stake in this company, which technically she did post-divorce. And her greed went ahead of her good judgment. Greed can be a powerful ally, just like Master Qui-Gon said in The Phantom Menace. We all know that awful movie, but that movie had a few good parts in it. But anyhow, and she agreed to this bullshit. Says here, with the judge's permission, I also wrote and submitted to the court the judgment entry of dissolution of marriage without children document. The day the judge signed this final decree entry was the happiest day of my life. He says, what happened to the tech startup? Well, less than 6 months after I got divorced, this company failed, when my business partner ran out of money to fund it. My contribution to this venture was mostly computer programming services, so all of it cost me was a bit of my time. A small price to pay to gain position for the checkmate move, don't you all think? The end. So, bro, that's an amazing calculating move there. And again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm sure the attorneys watching this have some questions here. But that seems sensible to me, I guess. And by the way, guys, he included a couple attachments to this thing with the actual court documents, with the dates and her real name and his real name and the stamps of all legal shit. So it looks like this is actually what happened. He used her greed, because he mentioned that she's a greedy a-hole, against her, because she was probably convinced she's going to make millions off this startup. And he didn't contribute to this startup at all. It was just his it was probably a deal where like somebody came with him with money, and he had all the skills, so he got a stake in the company. The guy financing got a stake in the company, and she got a stake in the company, and she fell for this. And there you go. So great job, man. Again, looking back, I think you probably could have walked away earlier, and even though you would have taken a hit financially, at least you've been rid of her. But hey, you know what? I'm glad you're free of her. I'm glad you walked away with all that money, and she didn't walk away with shit. And obviously, she's a freaking dumbass for going along with not even consulting, because most attorneys, you can get a consultation, and she could have had a consultation about this whole thing, but she was obviously so greedy and wanted to make so much money off it that she thought, no big deal. What a freaking dumbass. But anyhow, bro, good for you. Glad you're doing well. Don't fucking get married again. You're in your late 50s. You got money. Do well. Take care of yourself. End of story. And I just hope your daughter, who was a result of all this, that she's a good person. I hope you raise her in a way that she doesn't act like her mom and doesn't act like the gals that are out there nowadays that I talk about in all these videos. I really hope that. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. For the attorneys out there, you also can comment below. I'm sure you're going to have questions. And also, guys, if you got a good story you'd like to share, by all means, email it to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just make sure when you write your stories, make it easy for me to read. Don't jam everything together. Make it, if you're reading it on camera, write it in a way that you would read on camera. That's a very good important point I got to make. Also, this includes really good articles or crazy stories. If you haven't checked out my other channel, the other channel is They Did What. There's a link here in the description. If you like the crazy stories, check that out. I do a video on there every day as well if you want to see me twice a day. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.